Any second now. There it is. There it
Mine,
is. How loud is my voice?
it's of a fine loudness.
Fine loudest. That's what I'm looking for. Um,
Not in the red. I don't know.
yeah, we can fix that
Put
later
in.
in post-production.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post. So this is going to be a show then?
I don't know. It doesn't have to be, but, we'll record it just for fuck's sake.
I'm going to pretend like it isn't. And
Hey, if at the end of it you're like, I don't feel like it, that means it was an amazing call.
right, yeah,
If at the end you say, I do want to broadcast it, that means it was an amazing call.
right. That's the whole point, I guess. So
Yeah, that's the whole point. Because, there's some things in here that I don't know how much of my own pettiness I'll be exposing or how much of my own
yeah.
wise intellectual insight I'll be providing. But it really is a story about a magician and a young boy with hopes and dreams to be heard and understood. You know that feeling well.
Oh yeah, it's a beautiful story.
So, before we get into this, how are you doing?
Take a drink of water here. I'm getting by.
Yeah.
Everyday adventure.
Yeah.
Pretty good most of the time.
I imagine it's got to be a strange place you're in right now.
Yeah, it is. It has been for a while.
For a multitude of reasons.
Yeah. Um, but most of the time, it's just playing video games and watching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. That's the truth.
It's the perfect prescription.
Yeah.
What are the video games that an Alex Fulton would be playing?
I play all sorts of games, but currently it's sort of an embarrassing one. Normally I like games that are got something aesthetically interesting going on, or they kind of have a nostalgic kind of feeling. But this one's just about a bunch of people shooting and killing each other.
Sweet.
But
Yeah.
it's the battle royale game where 100 people parachute onto a map and survival of the fittest. Um,
So essentially, it's crack cocaine.
it is. It really is. And I've become obsessed with it as of late.
I.
But it's funny because just real quick,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
based on the movie Battle Royale, the Japanese.
Oh, so it must look
action.
amazing.
Well, no.
No.
I mean, it looks good, but it's based in concept. And I just want to point out that in Battle Royale, there's 42 participants on the island of death.
Well, of course there are.
In this one, there's 100, but 42 is in the spirit of the game and the genre.
Um, that game and games like Fortnite make me think of the old. I don't know if it's a religious saying, but 1,000 angels on the head of a pin.
Uh huh.
If you think about it, you have 1,000 minds or 100 minds all interacting on a space that literally doesn't exist. It might as
Yeah.
well be the size of the head of a pin, and everyone is just dancing and reflecting off of it, and
Yeah.
seems pretty apropos.
No, I like that.
I haven't played video games in, like I said, I think the last time I talked about video games might have been with you or John. I
Yeah.
miss you, John. I hope you're doing well out there.
Me too.
It was BioShock.
Oh yeah. I never played it, but I'm aware of it.
The first BioShock. It just had it had all the atmosphere of a Resident Evil, but it had all the action of a Halo and story.
Yep.
It was
Got that Ayn Rand influenced
yeah.
full time travel story.
It was just gorgeous,
Yeah.
truly artistic, and like And I
Yeah.
know that they came out with some sequel or a third one that was supposed to blow.
Yeah, there's multiple.
Yeah.
I remember complaints about that game, like just the realism of things like video game tropes, like clawing through the trash to find food to that like or like. But in this game, you actually find needles and you just jab yourself with needles and stuff to regain your health, and it's just absurd. Um, but like video gamey, in a way. But yeah, games prettiness wise have come a long way. And the whole VR thing is starting to take off, and I'm actually like afraid of it.
I think
The way
about
I
it.
would a psychedelic.
Yeah, right. Like it would become like a new cybernetic breast to just cling to and
Yeah,
suckle for just
yeah,
years.
yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I have one. I have one of those things. Like I got it as a gift, and I haven't opened it because it's just too big of a step.
You haven't even opened it. You're afraid of the thing.
I am, yeah. Um,
That's amazing.
Partly out of I kind of have a feeling I'd get motion sickness, and that's one thing that's kind of keeping me, just from a practical standpoint, but the philosophical implications also.
I'm
But anyway,
still a fan of Terrence McKenna's virtual reality machine. I think that one is
yeah, me too.
the piece de resistance.
He sold it well,
He
and
certainly did. And I feel like he's alive on YouTube, but he still has absolutely no. He's got web presence, but he still has no meat space presence. It's like,
social media outreach.
yeah, it's
He's a meme. He's become a meme as he predicted.
yeah, it's I I am not sad that he isn't here to see all this because I'm sure he saw more than most, but um, maybe it's lucky maybe it would pale in comparison. Like it would be like I was right, but I was wrong. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't think he, he couldn't have been here to see it. It's just not the way
It's not the
it
way it works.
was going to be. He had to. I don't know. I mean, he's. I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say, but it's just without it coming off as a total cliche. But
Yeah, but it's like he invented some. I mean,
like
if you
his
invent
death,
them,
but it's like a fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi. He had to die for the meme content to spread like it did, and it's part of the myth. Of course, he died of a brain tumor, which is
that was in the shape of a
always
mushroom.
suspect. Yeah.
Well, who knows? Well, I
I think
think
there were a lot of people who just weren't in the program for the post 911 world. Like they either took the ejector seat or were booted out by the system.
who's your top five that were ejected or
Ter-
booted?
Terrence McKenna,
Okay,
um, fuck.
Wilson, Robert Anton Wilson. Didn't he die right before?
No, he died after.
He did.
Uh,
Okay, I was wrong.
William Cooper,
Okay,
he died after, but
but just like a month or so, right?
a month
Or
or so
shortly.
after he predicted the thing
Yeah.
that summer. I'd probably put him on there. I would say Jim Keith is one of them.
Okay.
Um,
He's Mothman.
no, that's John Keel.
John
Jim
Keel.
Keith is Saucer of the Illuminati and um, the Gemstone File and Secret and Suppressed and
Yeah, I don't know
oh,
him.
City. Really? Black Helicopters over America.
I
Um,
remember Mancow. Mancow had black helicopters following him.
uh, no, not him. You should look and listen to Jim Keith. It's actually Erica's dad.
What?
Yeah, I thought you knew this.
Oh, wow. Like, I don't know. I'm freaked out a little bit now. Did you know Jim Keith before you met her?
Um, I hadn't. I I think I might have heard him, but I wasn't familiar at all with him. And then until I met her, and I actually met her at the Halloween party at her sister's house, and they had a bunch of her dad's books. Like, so there was like
Oh,
6 copies of this book of his book on the Men in Black on the
oh
shelf, and
my.
I was like, "What the hell are these doing here?" And they're like, "Oh, that's our dad." And it's like, "Whoa!" And we hit it off pretty
Jesus,
well.
that's its own call. What the? I'd love to dig into that. Jesus, but I don't know if this is the time or the place. But that's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah.
You guys are pretty
Well,
much
he's one because he died in 1999.
you guys are pretty much together forever then.
Yeah,
And we don't have to
we're a power
broadcast this.
couple. Good, 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 good.
Oh man, that's wild. All right, so and who's your fifth? You got a fifth?
Well, let's see, Jimmy. I was gonna say Bill Hicks.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Bill Hicks. And I don't believe he's Alex Jones, for the
No,
record.
no.
Um, so I would definitely put him on there. Five. I think that's only four, so there's one more, but might be eluding me.
Yeah, the voices that you're like, oh crap, what? I wish I could just turn to them right now to get some sanity or
Hmm.
some feedback or some clarity, um, because of everything you had heard the 10 years prior, and then what would they do? I think Bill Hicks would have really, um, oh God, that's another like 2 hours of conversation. um, Crap. Yeah, see, you don't do this in a while, and then you hook up with one of your online brothers, and it's just like, holy crap, there's so much more.
Yeah.
But the reason why we are here tonight is because of a book.
Oh, okay.
Well, the reason why this call is taking place tonight between you and I is because originally we had scheduled uh, to do an official Always Record episode to interview Jason Louv, who has an incredible, absolutely essential new book called John Dee and the Empire of Angels. And if you have any general knowledge, interest, curiosity, it's like a one-stop shop. It's like he did all the research and piled it into one book, and his writing is lucid and clear, and it is detailed and but not overwhelming. It just is it's incredible. Um, but and we'll get into this as this first part of the conversation. So basically, I want this conversation to be in two parts. It'll be about why we're here talking and why we're not talking to Jason Louv. And then I think it will dovetail into the second part, which will focus on your work with cryptokubrology.
Okay.
All right, and how we get there, it could take 10 minutes, it could take 30 minutes, but I think when we get there, it'll be a wonderful spot for you to um, explain your statement that no one wants to talk about cryptocurrency. Like, more proof, no one wants to talk about cryptocubrology. Because to me, I think, and we'll get there. We'll get there because I think I had some epiphanies about crypto K, and cubrology is hard to say, so I just say crypto K. You say crypto K,
No,
right?
that's totally acceptable.
Sweet. So, um, and Jason, if or fans of Jason, I think he's a public figure. I think that we can discuss this. This is not a character assassination. It's just something that happened, and I had some thoughts about it, and I think you have some thoughts about it because you were involved in it, and hopefully this will sell books for Jason, so that something good will come out of this. But I will just sort of detail. I'll just get it over with. Let's just jump into this. So, anyways, I saw that Jason Louv had released this book, John Dee and the Empire of Angels, and that name had always been a sore spot for me.
Hmm.
I had not really known much about him personally. All I had known about the name Jason Louv is that it was attached to the ultra culture and the magic school online. Had you ever run into that?
Yeah, I mean, I follow that on Twitter and been to the site a few times, and but I had no idea who this guy was, or that it was one guy behind it all, or how he's a sort of, he's just a full brand.
Yeah, he is. He's a brand.
He's the woke Mark Ruffalo, is his Twitter thing, and I like Mark Ruffalo. So.
He is the woke Mark Ruffalo.
Where did he come from? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But he had this magic school, and he would be like, send me an email for a free book on magic. And then he would have this website with like courses. And to me, that was just like, gag me with a spoon. You know what I mean? Like in the age of the internet, with all the magical things that seem to be exploding all around us, and again, people were hip to the internet way before me. I didn't really log on and get into it until like 2007 or whatsoever. So if I'm late to the party and this is all nonsense, I'm guilty as hell. I will be first to admit it. But I'm just saying, in the corners that I was swimming in and the voices I was hearing, it was like out in LA, here's this dude with a school that you can pay money for, when everyone else was like basically giving it away for free.
Yeah.
You know? So it was like...
There's like a heavy feeling of marketing with this guy.
And it did, and his stuff didn't even look that good. That's the thing that kind of killed me. It looked kind of like just the whatever I would see connected with it. It just looked a little like schlocky. It just looked a little like paint by numbers. It just didn't have, like, if you're gonna wow someone on the internet and say pay money for magic courses, I think you got to come up with some like baller graphics. You know what I mean? You got to like,
yeah.
And there was nothing that intrigued me.
If depending on your goal, if it's just to make money,
yeah.
It's more about. But I'm not saying that this is the agenda here. But it does feel schlocky. I'm not against making money or monetizing content or yourself or anything like that. Not at all. Just for the record. But when you lose a connection with being kind of just a person, which just sounds really harsh and mean, because I don't know the guy at all.
Right.
And it might very well just be that he was busy. And they didn't think that the interview would reach enough people.
Oh, wait, we're getting to that. We're getting that.
Okay.
This all builds. I got this all built.
Right. Okay. Well,
it's a beautiful thing. So, spoiler alert.
Okay.
All right. So, superficially, we both don't know the guy. We're aware of like some of his site. We're like nothing really there that really grabs us. Nothing that is really like.
I want to point out. Just I'm looking at Ultra Culture, and he one of his recent podcasts, he interviewed this guy Michael M. Hughes on magical resistance.
Oh, Michael M. Hughes. Do you know Michael M. Hughes?
And he's a fucking knobhead of the highest order.
Michael Hughes?
Yeah. He's.
Hey, Mike, if you're listening, I'm friends with Mike on Facebook.
I have him blocked.
I know you bumped
and he got kicked out of the Secret Sun too. So
yeah, he flamed out. He flamed out.
Yeah. But anyway, that guy is a very just conventional perspective, and I just wanted to point that out. That is a turn off immediately. Okay, I can cut that out though if you want.
No. Michael has a sense of humor, and it's all good. And I don't even think this will ever reach his radar.
Okay, I figured.
This probably won't even reach Jason's radar. Anyways, it is what it is. So we have this superficial perspective, but we don't even know who the guy. So we're not really like critiquing. It's just, nothing really big. And so I hear he has this book, right? So I'm like, I got to read this book because on some level I want to hate it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before I buy the book, I go to the YouTube and Jason Louv, And some of the things that I find are some podcasts. And I'll mention two things. I heard his podcast. I forget the name of the podcast, but the guy on there, so if Jason Louv has a book out and he's talking about Enochian magic, saying Enochian magic, and the host keeps saying, well, Enochian magic, like, oh, Christ, like, that's just hilarious. That just tells me, some of the waters he's swimming in. I mean, even if Jason's wrong, at least, come to an agreement. Enochian, what the? Anyways, and then I see this old 2007 video clip where he's in this hall where Alex Gray introduces him. I'm like, holy shit, that's kind of baller, right? And
2007.
yeah, right. So he's OG, and Alex Gray brings him up on stage, and Alex Gray does this whole thing, and he's like, Jason, give us your definition of magic. I think it's interesting. I like it when you say it. And then, essentially, he says to this audience of people, you are God. And my eyes just, like, roll in the back of my head. I'm like, God, you can't say that to people. It's like the worst, tackiest magic thing to say to an audience. You just don't say it out loud. It's a cringy thing. And then he goes, and that's the truth. And magic is a hobby. I'm like, what the fuck? And he has all this self-deprecation about himself, and I'm just cringing, and I'm wanting to hate this book, right? And Jason, it's getting to super compliments here. And then I listen to another podcast, and he's lucid, and he's clear, and he knows his shit. And I'm like, I got to get this book. And I get the book, and it's lucid, and it's clear, and it's research, and it's work of the highest order. I think it's an instant classic. It will be known as like the go-to book on John Dee. I mean, just hats off to you, bravo. And I was like, I gotta interview this dude because I was so wrong. And that's truth. I was like, my jealousy or my inner self was projecting stuff onto him about my own doubts. And once I saw this tome that he wrote, I was like, I was wrong. I gotta talk to him.
Sure. You wanted to talk to him, get to know him.
I just had to say, like, I wanted to just gush about the book. I wanted to compliment him on how he conducted himself in these podcasts, and I just felt that there would be some simpatico there, right? Like, we would have, he would say things that seemed directly out of my head. Like, he could phrase things clear, and I was just like wow, good stuff, okay? So, right now, Jason Louv, the fucking man. So I reach out I become friends with him on Facebook, but it doesn't go through. I email him or something, and I'm thinking I can get in touch with him. Oh, in his acknowledgments, he thanks Alan Green. So I'm thinking that's my Alan Green, and your Alan Green. So Alan knows him. That's what I'm thinking. So maybe if he knows Alan Green, then he knows SyncBook. He knows SyncBook Press. That's my jumping point. Apparently, it's not our Alan Green. It's another Alan Green.
No, there is another Alan Green.
So I just sent him a little message. Hey, blah, 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 friend of Alan Green, SyncBook Press. Want to do an interview, right? It gets kicked back. Jason doesn't respond here. Please go to this email address. So I send him an email. I get an email back from his assistant.
The assistant.
I'm like, assistant? What does
he need an assistant for?
Yeah, right? But I'm like, wow, this guy is high level. Maybe this school is, bigger than I thought. So I'm like, all right, well, hey, he's got an assistant. So, blah, blah, blah. Send us your credentials, blah, blah, blah. So over 4 weeks, I'm going back and forth with this assistant. And finally, the assistant says, hey, give us some times and dates that you think you'd be available to interview Jason. He has a very busy schedule, right? I was at the end of the list, and it finally came back to me and it's like, hey, we're going to maybe consider this. So I give him like 3 weeks, 4 weeks of open times, basically wide open windows, saying any time during the week after 5 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. It's up to you. I said, listen, if your goal is to sell books, go with the podcast that you can sell the most books. We probably don't have the biggest audience, blah, blah, blah. I figured we would never hear from again. Like 3 days later, Jason can do August 23rd, Thursday at 7 o'clock. I'm like, okay. I think I emailed you and said, hey, can you do this? And you said, yeah, I can do it. So I said, we confirm August 23rd, Thursday at 8 o'clock, right? So I talk to you, and I get a return email. Great. Jason has confirmed, we can confirm with you August 23rd on Thursday, blah, blah, blah. This is like, I think, 3 weeks ago. I think it's about 3 weeks ago. So I go through all the professional hoops. I go through the assistant. I send him all my credentials.
Very ably, by the way. I read you that exchange, and you were more than decent and professional.
Thank you, Alex. I think I'm decent at that. So I was decent. I thought I represented the SyncBook brand well, and it was very open and welcome. So the last thing they say is, please send us some details about topics you'd like to talk about. So I reach out to you to say, hey, send me some Crypto-K stuff so that he can see it, because I think we want to talk about this and how it relates to Enochian magic. Or if it doesn't relate to Enochian magic, I would just like to hear this guy's, perspective, point of view. So I'm just going to read what I sent to the assistant and Jason about, hey, that date and time that we've confirmed, that I've prepared over the last few weeks, read your book, doing some work, trying to put together a sweet show so you can sell some product and I can get what I want, and we can talk about Alex's work. So this is what I said. I said, these are the areas that I'd like to talk about that I feel are interconnected. We will touch on the revelation of the true source of the Hermetic corpus, the Gutenberg galaxy, the arrival of the printing press, and McLuhan's theory of sense ratios, because that was right around that time. The Art of Memory, which is Francis Yates' book. Giordano Bruno's Compass and the 30 Seals. John Dee's connection to Rosicrucianism. The Fall of the Winter King and the Failed Alchemical Empire. The role of complexity in Enochian magic. The Alchemy of Media. And Alex Fulton's research into Crypto-K. See forwarded message. After that, I sent him a link to my website, my blog. I sent him a link to your article on Twin Peaks: The Return, and I sent them your thread that sketches out like a map, the Crypto-K connections. And off went the email, and I'm psyched because I feel like he's into it. He knows where we're at. I think he can speak on these things. He's going to be speaking to a couple of dudes who won't be saying Enochian and not be proud that they. Some guy in his podcast was bragging about how he said the word sigil correctly, which is like sizzle or something. It was like, I say it the right way, and then he's saying Enochian, and it's just like, oh, it's madness.
I'm glad I didn't say Enochian. Did I lose you? I can't hear you. No. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
You there?
Oh, there you are.
All right. Literally 4 hours after I sent him that email sketching out everything that we were going to talk about, at 1:30 in the morning, email from his assistant. Sorry, but Jason had to cancel. Maybe we can reschedule. No, maybe we can do something in the future. That's it. Like what?
That was it.
That was it. It was just like, sorry, can't do it, and maybe in the future sometime. Now, this is where I want to speak a little bit about what confuses me, right? All right, so Jason Louv, magician, speaks about his work with Enochian magic and how it instantly transforms the substrate of reality and blah, blah, blah. Like, this is some complex shit, right? It's not like you just pick it up. Like, it's detail-oriented. It's specific, right? But he can't. Okay, all right. So here we go. Here we go. He can't. He can't do calendar magic. So here's the thing. Either A, like in his beautiful book, he talks about the theories as to what really transpired between Kelly and Dee in the Enochian magic and the scrying and the talking to angels. And he lists the different theories as to what really happened. Well, here are the theories that I have about why Jason Louv canceled. And like, I agree, this might be totally petty. But as a magician slash professional slash assistant having dude, I'm just curious as to why you can't handle calendar magic. Anyways, boom. A, maybe it was just an emergency. And I dig that. Like, shit happens. Life happens. An interview with two strangers on the internet to sell maybe 2 books, you could, if emergency happens, that you can just brush that away, and I get it. But as a professional, right, if an emergency did come up, I personally, with calendar magic, would say, listen, an emergency happened. You don't have to tell me the personal details. But given that I had given you 3 weeks of dates, right, and this is like your main sweeps period where you're trying to sell the books, Jason had to cancel. We're so sorry. Could you do any other dates that, just give me some other dates, right? Just say, just be forthcoming. Like, you wanted to do this. The emergency happened. We have to cancel at that time. But since you confirmed that you wanted to do it, you should give me, hey, can you do these other dates? That's how I would have done it. That's how any professional would have done it, correct? So what makes me think it wasn't an emergency, right, is that he didn't do that. If it really was an emergency and you wanted to talk, he would have said, or the assistant would have said, hey, can you do some of these other dates because you gave us about 4 weeks full of dates to do, right? Very simple. So I don't think it was a true emergency, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Let's cross it off the list. All right.
Can rule that one off.
Yeah. Maybe he got a better offer for a podcast on that day. I'm totally cool with that. I already said in my email. Sell as many books as you can. This is a great book. Sell, sell, sell. I don't think we're your place to sell, but I think we can have a great conversation, right? Again, if he got the better offer, hey, we have to cancel. Can we do yours at the end of your schedule? Again, if you're a professional and you have this whole system set up and you give me a confirmation, right? It's like the Seinfeld bet. You can take the reservation, but it's holding the reservation. That's where you get the magic, right? That's the whole point of the reservation. You confirm because you said, you have jumped through my hoops. You are, we want to talk to you. We have confirmed a date with you. But if a better offer came up, you don't have to tell me that. Cancel, but then reschedule. So I don't think it was a better offer, right?
No.
Did he get freaked out? Well, this comes into nobody wants to talk about cryptokubrology, right? Did he look at what I showed him, and was there anything on that list where he said, and this is where I think you can appreciate it, I think Crypto K is, to some people, when you look at it superficially, it has all the stench, and I don't want to, again, I'm not here to insult you and or look down on anything. It has like a Sandy Hook kind of feel, superficially.
Okay, yeah. I think, I know what you mean.
It's just, oh God, like people go, I know what this is, and ugh.
Sure, yeah.
Right? I don't want to deal with that. So, okay, I'm going to circle that.
Pattern making. You can find patterns in anything.
You can find patterns in anything.
Numbers, you can do anything you want with numbers. And
absolutely. Absolutely. So, he just sees that and goes, ugh. He disapproves. So I'm saying that's probably that's a theory that I'm leaving on the table. All right, let's go to the next theory. He was intimidated. I love that theory.
I was thinking that one earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that theory. That strokes my ego, and that makes me feel good because I'm like, hey, I wrote this incredible proposal of stuff to talk about, and you're not prepared to talk about this stuff. And then Crypto K, you can't wrap your head around that, and it's just too much for you, so you got to back up.
Yeah.
And you don't want to talk ever because it's just too much. It's just like, oh, that's way over my head. So I'm circling intimidated, but I still give the weight to freaked out.
Right. Well, there's also. Do you have more? Do you want to get through?
There's just three more things.
Okay, go ahead.
He's lazy. He's just like, no, lazy just gets crossed off the list right away. It's just not a theory that works. Maybe he's got some crazy.
Crazy.
Maybe he met a crazy, hot, attractive
Right.
a partner, and the next week he's going to be on a cruise, and I don't think it's that. I'm crossing that off the list.
Well, judging by his picture and that he lives in L.A., it's possible.
I'm sure he's getting that on the reg. I think he's got that. He works as assistant with that. That's what the assistant's for, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm going to cross off intimidated, and I'm left with disapproval, freaked out, and the seventh thing, Crypto K. I really think it's the Crypto K that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what put it over the line.
Right.
Regardless of the situation. I mean, I'm sure there are many factors that went into it. I think a mixture of some of those feelings, intimidation / laziness, in the sense of I don't want to. I have a rap that I'm doing with this book, and I don't feel like going and having an actual conversation rather than sort of somebody really, because really this wasn't going to be the standard interview about the book. I hadn't even read the fucking book, so I think a combination of things like that.
Yeah, it just
okay at the end.
Yeah,
really.
so he clearly did not have some emergency, right?
No.
Right. And so it just, to me, is his magic, like everything can be viewed through a magical lens. That's what the whole chaos magic movement was all about. What I really fell in love with Jason was two statements. One was that he took issue with the chaos magic of the 90s, and he said, yeah, you can do it, but there's something to be said about complexity. There's something to be said about mastering certain things. Like in the 90s, they said you don't have to know Hebrew. You don't have to know gematria. You don't have to commit these things to memory. And he said, I said, well, but I think that there's something that we're missing. There's something to be valued in that. And I always agreed with that. He mentioned some of this on Gordon White's podcast, who said probably the most baffling statement I've heard from somebody. The conversation, so that sort of stepped on Gordon White's toes a lot, because Gordon White is Mr. Chaos Magic, right? But he's like chaos magic for the stock market or something. I don't know what he does, but the conversation came to D and D's involvement in mathematics, and Gordon said something like, which an intellectual project that involves maths, which is a kind of magic, I guess. I'm like, what? Who's going to deny that math? I mean, math is a magic. It's like you have Enochian magic, and then you have mathematical magic. Like, it's like the spine of this motherfucker. How can you?
Doesn't he know Marty Leeds?
Yeah, right. Wait, let me count on my hands. Marty, dude. Leeds. That's 10 letters. That's 10 fingers. I never noticed that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I wanted to kind of say, hey, were you kind of like, did Gordon White, like, are you kind of like not down with, the Australian chaos magic thing? Like, I think he's like, no, you need complexity. That magic takes a lot of time and takes a lot of effort. And that's why I wanted to address Crypto K, because I don't think it's lazy in any way. I don't think it's something that is. I think it's the product of a complex system of thinking, and it's sort of like this zone. Like you're in a zone right now of Crypto K, and something will be born out of Crypto K. We just don't know what it is right now. I don't think Crypto K is the thing itself that will be born out of it. I think you're fully into a phase where this is what you're grappling with. Do you agree with that in some sense?
Yeah. I'm just sitting here bathing in the butter of your words. Just saying it. We need you on our team. We're working on we're really literally just this week starting work on like a short video series introductory to the whole idea that's going to be somewhat professional with like intros and outros and all that kind of good shit. So yeah, it's nice to hear you articulate it so well.
Yeah, because it just reminds me so much of getting involved with Mark Leclerc's tensor. Leclerc's initial theory, I know in his head, I wish we could see what he saw in his head, what he was trying to bring to the surface. Ultimately, what I birthed out of my work with the tensor with Mark was this movie called the Kubrick Transformer. But for me, that was the thing that I was meant to birth, because that was the key that I used to unlock all these doors into blogging and podcasting and talking to Alan and David and this conversation right here and having the chance to interview pretty much every voice that I wanted to interview online, that I would read, and just like this Jason Louvre situation, say, I gotta talk to that person face to face, because I can't trust the written word. I gotta get a sense of the person.
Right.
And what will be birthed out of the Crypto K, I'm fascinated by. Now, what Jason Louvre is trying to say, what was birthed out of Enochian magic, was basically the modern world, right? Like that's the synthesis of his whole book, is that John Dee left England to go to the main continent because he couldn't, and I'm probably going to flip-flop this in some level, but the Catholics were too uptight about magic and shit, so he had to go to the continent so he could learn magic and math and optics and geography, right? So this cat goes to the continent, learns all this shit, comes back to the court of Queen Elizabeth, right? All these magicians there are being invited into the court, and they want these motherfuckers to turn lead into gold, right? That's why they're like, they want money, right? Now, John Dee comes there with his complex synthesis of information and knowledge, right? His library has more books in it than any library, right, in the world. And his claim to fame was he didn't make lead out of gold, but when the Spanish Armada unleashed every single warship that they had to go crush England, John Dee said, don't send out any boats. And the Queen said, what? Because of his knowledge of astronomy and optics and weather and math, he goes, like a hurricane or some shit is going to happen. He goes, every boat out there is going to crash because of the wind and the rain and the waves. So they just sat there, and 90% of the Spanish Armada was sunk without a ship ever attacking. Like, genius, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's magic. The magician basically said, here's my pen. I wave this pen. We don't do anything. The Spanish Armada is crashed. Once the 90% was crashed, they went out. They destroyed the remaining things, and that's what led the birth of the English Empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
John Dee's work, following that, what he was doing is he wanted to transform the Judeo-Christian religions and bring it into a unified religion of love and God, right? He wasn't creating a religion. He was transforming it, right?
Okay.
He wasn't creating a school; he was transforming the existing schools. He was taking the shit of the day and trying to transform it. He had figured out what was happening, um, and I think that when someone looks at what we sent Jason with the Crypto K, it looks like the shit stain smeared against the wall of the schizophrenic, right? Literally superficially, it's like Jim Carrey, right? When he's got everything written on his walls.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not,
Do you want to know something
yeah,
about Jim Carrey?
yeah.
Is that Sean is from the same town as Jim Carrey, and he lived in an apartment that was Jim Carrey's apartment before his. So Jim Carrey moved out, and he moved in, and he looks a lot like Jim Carrey, and people were mistaking him for Jim Carrey when he had moved in, and then they made that movie, The Number 23.
Oh, did he search like all the different nooks and crannies of the apartment to find?
Well, this was long before Crypto K, so I don't know, but yeah, it's just an interesting wrinkle coincidence.
Like, I tell
So
the story all the time.
that movie is about Sean.
Yes, no, it is. It's about me. It's about all of us at some point.
Yeah.
I tell the story all the time. I remember the first time I saw Joe Alexander's first video about Christopher Lloyd, the Christ bearer. Right?
I don't know it, but
It's like a 4.5 minute video. It's bonkers, and his voice on there. I'm thinking this is like a guy. I hope this isn't offensive, but it's like a guy in like I envision like a Stephen Hawking guy in a basement and just like mangled and broken and cracked out and just
is
nuts.
this Joe Alexander you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what my vision was when I saw it. I go, but this is brilliant. This is brilliant. So I remember reaching out to him and saying, hey, I like your video and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know how Joe got into the whole fold of the sync book and everything, but I do remember that like I sent him a DVD of the Kubrick Transformer to Russia when he was playing in the Russian basketball league.
That's cool.
But I said, I don't care if this guy's weird. Like, I'll call him or I'll talk to him, and if it just can't work out, it can't work out. But I got to figure out what's going on there. And I'm just fucking disappointed that what we sent to him, Mr. Louvre, that I just feel like you're missing out. Or maybe not. I had some really big-time epiphanies after I kind of processed this and got over it, about how...
Can we, at
Yeah?
some point, maybe I could just read some of the stuff that was in what I sent?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Doesn't have to be now, but
Um, Let me finish up this thought, and then we'll dive into the K.
okay.
Okay, this is the last thing I want to say. One of the most brilliant, and this seems so simple, but Jason said something in a podcast sometimes it just takes a simple sentence for someone to say, and it just unlocks and puts together like the whole puzzle, right? And someone said, so what is Enochian magic? He goes, Enochian magic is designed to initiate one into the supernals of wisdom and understanding, right? Of Hokmah and Binah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a system designed to initiate you into the supernals, where your personality and your ego is turned to ashes, and then you come out on the other side. And I'm like, that's it right there. Design a magical system that is complex enough to get you to the other side, right? That's what we're looking for.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
And I think ultimately Crypto K, I feel like the Kubrick tensor, the tensor of Michael Kerr was the Enochian magic that that initiated me into the supernals, right? And then from there I did my work and blah, blah, blah. I think that Crypto K is a magical system designed to get you to the same place, just like John Dee's Enochian system. And I feel like
maybe, and hopefully more than just us, because I feel it has a, when you really get into it, it has a systematic quality that other people can see and appreciate in a way that sometimes a lot of magic, it's more about a totally personal experience, and this is too. But there's something. It's like the thing you come back from. What McKenna talks about, the pearl in the oyster that you bring back. You know, this is what we have to show you, like his time waves or whatever.
Absolutely.
And we have these numbers, among other things.
So, I am going to. So yeah, get into it. Like you said, no one wants to talk about Crypto K. Here we are. We're talking about it.
So why does no one want to talk about Crypto K?
That's the question. Why does no one want to talk about Crypto K?
Yeah, well, it's really hard to talk about, for one thing. I'm the only person, aside from Sean, really qualified to talk about it, and I still find it impossibly hard to talk about. And it's sort of like, you know how in Hitchhiker's Guide, the number 42 is the answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a perfect way of phrasing it, because 42 is the answer. It's the specific answer. There's 4 other numbers, but 42 is sort of the cardinal, is the king. But it's the question that is impossible to formulate, or it's like as soon as we formulate the question that these numbers are an answer to, we will have figured out everything. Mm-hmm. What's going on, mm-hmm. Why we are here. So I'm just going to go through this email, which is really just a bunch of little factoids from the Twitter account that I run. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're based off these 5 numbers. And the 5 numbers are 42, 153, 237, 666, and 1776. 5 numbers for, 5 fingers. Mm-hmm. And when you combine these numbers with a very just screechingly detailed analysis of things like, of really weird esoteric things like the exact length of somebody's lifespan, mm-hmm. a famous person's lifespan, or the exact length of time between the 2 days of death of 2 famous people or whatever. And you combine that study with these numbers, just incredible things start to happen. And also with movies. Movies is completely there's history and the calendar, and then there's cinema, which is like a inverted. It's like the projector inverted on itself, and it's broadcasting the same signal. And this does feel like a signal buried in the noise.
All right, I love that.
So, this is just what I sent to you to send to Jason. And starts with a little picture of juxtaposing 2 images, one from the movie Alien and the one from the movie The Shining. And the Alien one is from the beginning. It's the computer screen where it says, interface 2037 reads something, request clarification, interface 2037, unable to clarify. And then The Shining, of course, we all know, room 237. And we know that, well, so this is the email now. I said, Alien and The Shining, spotlight on the number 237. And 2 times 3 times 7 is 42. Mm-hmm. And then you go and you see, okay, The Shining, how long did The Shining take to come out after Alien? Mm-hmm. And you find out it's like The Shining was released exactly 42 weeks and 42 days after Alien. So then you got 5 cardinal numbers. I already said those. Mm-hmm. And then you go to the calendar, and these are some of these images. So in between the deaths of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, his brother, the twin, the brothers, just everything is in those two people. Exactly 237 weeks between their deaths. Exactly. And okay, we keep going. What happened 237 weeks after The Shining released? That's a good one, right? Because The Shining directly 237, and so go forward 237 weeks. What came out? 2010, the sequel to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And then, but let's get even crazier. What happened 237 weeks after that? So 237 times 2 after The Shining. Well, you find that 237 weeks after 2010 was released Batman with Jack Nicholson,
who was in The Shining.
And who, if you want to get funny with it, in The Shining, Wendy hits him with a bat at the top of the stairs, and he falls. And then at the end of The Shining, Batman, the Bat, punches him, and he falls off the building.
Yeah.
As the Joker. So that's like just a tightly knit little portrait of this sort of structure. So then I think, okay, so Jack Nicholson, this is the guy that's deep in the center of this weird maze, right? Everybody knows this. He was born April 22nd of 1937. And then when you write that out, kind of like normally with slashes, you get 4/22/37, which is 4/2 and then 2/37. Perfect. Perfect little thing there. His birthday. And then let's try a different unit of measure. Instead of weeks, we go with days. And we say, what happened 237 days after The Shining released? So that's less than a year later. And we find that 237 days after The Shining released was the release date of the movie Scanners, directed by David Cronenberg. And what's really amazing about this is that if you look at the poster, the movie poster and the plot of the Scanners, there's a 237 in the plot, because on the poster it says there are 4 billion people on Earth and 237 are scanners. That's right there on the movie poster that came out 237 days after The Shining. And scanning is basically another way of saying shining. That's the power, it's the power. So that's pretty great. I think just off the top of my head that if you go 237 days before The Shining, you get the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner movie, which is great because Danny's constantly watching Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner and Shining. But anyway, let me keep going. So then, okay, we go to different number here, different subject. This is Stanley Kubrick's birthday. Okay, this is like, fuck it, the birth of Christ. There's going to be after K and before K once we're done with this. So 666 weeks after Stanley Kubrick was born was the day the movie Citizen Kane premiered, which is significant for all sorts of reasons, because Citizen Kane is like, for a long time and still is, like, was held up as like the cinematic masterpiece. It's like the perfect expression of cinema, what cinema can do. And Orson Welles' towering auteur figure 666 weeks after Kubrick was born. And I might point out that Citizen Kane has the initials of CK, which is the same as Cryptokubrology.
Yeah.
Which something you see a lot. Just throwing it out there.
No, I just wrote that down, CK.
Yeah, CK. Yeah, CK. So, and what is CK? CK, C Kubrick, maybe. And it's funny because there's Louis CK, who I wrote a big long article about before I got into all this, where I was pointing out how I was pointing out Crypto K things before I even knew what Crypto K was, that are present in Louis' TV show, Louis C.K. Anyway, okay, keeping going.
And for those, obviously, Crowley's addition of the K to magic, the marriage of C and K.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, I hadn't even put that one together. That's perfect.
Sorry to derail you. I'm shut up.
No, it's fine. No, it's perfect. So and then this is so sometimes there's other numbers. So if you flip 666, you get 999, and
Hmm.
so there's very convoluted or reasons why that's I mean that's a legitimate magical operation. Okay, flipping of the number. The six and the nine. The six is the only number that you can flip um, one at 180 degrees and get another number.
Right.
It's so we go 999 weeks after Kubrick was born, and it's the day the CIA opened its doors,
Mm.
September 18th, 1947. And I would also point out that on July 26th, 1947, which was Kubrick's 19th birthday, was the day that Truman signed the National Security Act, which created the CIA on paper. And so that was on his 19th birthday, and then it opened its doors 999 weeks after he was born.
Uh, Truman Show, is that connected to Truman creating the NSA, and really the Truman Show is that he's in a controlled system?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, Truman dropped the bomb, and that's a big. And Truman himself has a perfectly aligned interval with Kubrick's birthday. So I think it's 2,307 weeks before Kubrick was born was Truman's birthday. So 2307. So we play with zeros a lot. So you can drop the zero. And that takes me to my next interval because it's 2,370 weeks after Kubrick's birthday. 2370 exactly. It was the day The Exorcist came out. Um, which that's a really loaded thing that I've because the whole idea of possession and we have a demon inside us or whatever. That sort of storyline is prevalent in the narrativizing or the reading of all of this information because it forms a pattern that's really quite startling. Okay, keeping going. God, there's a lot of these. We go, okay, so what happened 666 weeks after The Shining came out? That's another hard and solid, like, occult interval. And we find that exactly 666 weeks after The Shining came out was the first World Trade Center bombing in 1903, which was the precursor to 9/11, and also lots of weirdness with that one. And but it's also funny because it was a movie. The movie came out called Falling Down,
Hmm.
which with Michael Douglas. I'm sure you've seen it.
Oh, that's so creepy to connect to that event.
Yeah, I mean, Falling Down came out the same day as the first World Trade Center bombing,
Jesus.
like the trade centers will do. Falling Down.
And then people jumping out of the building.
Sure, sure, sure. And
Jesus.
that movie is pretty crazy. Um, okay, so then again we flip the six, and we go 999 weeks after The Shining, and that's exactly the day that Eyes Wide Shut came out. So it's a perfect 999 weeks between The Shining and Eyes Wide Shut, which are pretty arguably definitely. Well, they're two of your Transformer films, right? The two
Yeah.
most like deeply crazy Kubrick movies that people like to analyze. I guess 2001 is the other one, but so that's pretty perfect. And I want to point out that we are now coming up in the first week of September. We are going to hit 999 weeks since Eyes Wide Shut came out.
Oh, wow.
It's going to form this great big parent thesis, as we call it in the field. And so I'm like looking forward to that September 7th as a day to look for some kind of something going on.
This September 7th.
This coming September 7th.
Shit.
So I'm putting it out there. It's sort of a prediction, and predictions are a dime a dozen. But the scary thing about the predictions using this sort of formula is they tend to work.
Wow. So Trump gets impeached.
Maybe something like that, or something Trump. It's got to be something Trump related because he's like the center of the cyclone right now.
Yeah, he's like a fucking sparkler, right?
Yeah.
He's waiting for it to get to that point where there's no more sparkle dust there, but it just keeps burning bright, man.
Yeah, I don't think he can be stopped, but we'll see. Um, so I got quite a few more. Speaking of Trump, I'll just skip a few here and point out that there's this documentary movie called "You've Been Trumped." Some people might have seen. This came out in 2012, and it came out released exactly 237 weeks before the Trump inauguration of January 20th, 2017, the day Trump became president. So You've Been Trumped released 237 weeks before Trump was sworn in as president. I just like to...
Well, how about
We've been Trumped.
the fact that 9/11, right? 9 times 11 is 999.
99.
Right?
But,
99. I guess, yeah.
But hey.
I was just thinking that Trump, became president on 11/9.
Right. Well, he was elected. Yeah, no, 11/8, 11/9. Well, that's the thing, because 237, it's an odd number, so you can't divide it evenly.
Mm-hmm.
But you can divide... The place where you divide it most evenly is 118 plus 119.
Mm-hmm.
So 11/8 plus 11/9 equals 237.
That's good.
Yeah.
Those are the two most important days, the election and then the reality.
Right. So lots of things happen on 11/9. Paul McCartney died on 11/9.
Yes, he did. It's so good.
Specifically.
Just before you get into the next bit, I'm loving it. Because I just want to see if these are on your radar. I'm sure they are. And if they're not, who knows, whatever. You're talking about the space of time as being an important precursor, right? Or important...
Right.
Right?
The temporal interval as measured by the calendar that we have. And the different bits of time.
So I think of, 42. If you flip 42, you get the 24 hours of the day. Pretty easy, right?
Exactly.
But then you think 365. Well, 3 6s, 666, is one of the 5 numbers. It's almost encoded in the 365.
I like that. I'll take that.
So, but yeah, like, again, a system like this, once you say, hey, I'm into it, then if you have a certain level of complexity to bring to the system, you start seeing it yourself, right? You get to play along, or you get pulled into it. And, like, to me, it's, David Plate speaks on this really, really well in the correspondences. And the more information you can keep in your head, the more correspondences you can make, and you get that Kundalini action, right? You get that lightning flash, because you go bing, bang, boom, and next thing you know, you get the thunder.
Yeah.
And that's what a good magical system should do, right? It should get the brain moving at speeds higher than it thinks it can process information. You break that sound barrier, and then you break that light barrier, and you get that thunder, and something is born out of it. So for me, just hearing you talk about this system right now, it'll just keep going. Like, to me, it's a good system.
It is. It's very orderly, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. I mean, there is some, but it's sort of justified by the meat.
Yeah, you haven't really said anything so far with my exposure into these waters, into these systems, to where I said, come on, Alex, that's a little bit of a stretch. Like, the scanners, at first I was like, are you kidding me? But then you said, what was on the poster?
Yeah, 237, the numbers.
You're like, okay, well, like, why?
You can't, it's pretty hard to, yeah. No, I know what you mean. Okay, well, here's one. This is Trump related. Trump's grandmother, her name was Elizabeth Christ Trump. She died on June 6th, 66.
Mm-hmm. No, she did.
She did. So that was 6/6/66. And
all right.
And then there's the second part here is that 6666 was exactly 666 days before 2001 release
Of course
on,
it was.
on April 2nd of 68, which is 4/2. So it was released on
Oh,
4/2, 666 days after 6666.
God.
Got one here with David Lynch and Twin Peaks. So Twin Peaks premiered on April 8th, 1990. This was exactly 2,307 weeks into David Lynch's life.
Mm.
2,307 weeks Twin Peaks premiere. Um, then I got one here about Charlie Manson. This could be a candidate for where you can say, come on, want Charlie Manson's total lifespan. And let me just iterate that Charlie Manson, another one of these central 60s figures, son of man. There's no end to the occult significance of this guy, right? His exact lifespan was in weeks 4,332. So at first that appears unrelated. Um, it so this is where I get into breaking numbers down into different parts where we see these numbers represented in a larger number. So 4,332 weeks can be broken into 150. Sorry, this one's tough to put out. 432 plus 1,530 plus 2,370, right? Now, 1530 and 2370 are perfect, but 432, what is 432? Well, 432 is a million different things. It's half the diameter of the sun in miles, approximately. It's the so-called, and it's also twice the diameter of the moon, which is 216. It's like part of this sequence of 216, 40, 32, 864. And it's supposed to be the tuning that is in line with the vibration of the Earth or whatever.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, 432 versus 440. But 432 is also 42 plus 153 plus 237. So the first three of the five numbers added together equal 432. This magical number, and then also with 432, if you sum it with its mirror, so 432 plus 234, you get 666.
Yeah.
So Charlie Manson's whole lifespan in weeks lasted exactly 42 plus 153 plus 237 plus 1530 plus 2370 weeks.
Yeah.
So there you can say you've gone too far. You have dropped off the map with that one. But the more you start to see it, the less crazy it seems.
It's a source. It's an energy source. These systems.
Yeah.
If you haven't been touched by the energy of these systems, or if you can't access it, I think that it's a statement on your level of your ability to hold multi different perspectives at once, right? Your ability to hold different systems of information in your head at once, and your ability to confront complexity and for your mind to process it, right? All the exercises of all the hardcore magical systems begin by training your brain to stay still and to be able to withstand the rattling of, the mind going at faster and faster speeds. And so for someone to say, oh, that's a bit of a stretch, well, if you do the sort of the legwork on that, and then you find that symmetry or that poetry in there, there is a energetic that occurs. And I'm sure that once you cracked that, it changed you on some level, undeniably.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because if you remember when Manson died, it was kind of elongated process where we all heard that he was sick and he was in the
When you're
hospital.
waiting for that.
And I was just rubbing my fingers together, right, waiting to see. And I looked it up before he died, and I saw this number ahead, like a week before he died, or whatever, a few days. It was at least 5 or 6 days before he croaked. I saw that number coming up, and I said, "That's the day he's going to die."
Oh, that's the most beautiful feeling in the world sometimes. Not that, well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if they know what I'm saying, but yeah, no, when you're like, oh crap, I know it, it's just going to be then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've done it. I did it. It wasn't just it was just a feeling, but it was borne out
Yeah.
with the system, and it proved correct.
I want to relate this to a couple of things. But keep going. I got to write these down as notes because I can't formulate right now. But keep going.
Okay, well, here's one I like is that it's about Stanley Kubrick and Stan Lee, the Marvel guy. So Stan Lee was born exactly 2,037 days before Kubrick. 2037 days. So, here we have two Stanleys from the Bronx. Both grew up in the Bronx. Both, went on to succeed wildly, but the other wrinkle is that Stan Lee with these Marvel movies, he's in every one of them.
Yeah.
He cameos in every film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I like to think, and this is what the whole system makes it apparent, is that Stanley Kubrick cameos in every film in the known universe through this sort of system that appears. We can get into that later. So that's a really hard and fast little interval, but it's good. But the other thing here, the other side of this coin, is Jack Kirby, who was the real creative genius in the Marvel days in the 60s. And I say that, he was the idea man. And then so we have Jack Kirby, and in The Shining we have Jack Torrance, which is, by this point well known to be like Kubrick was putting himself in the character of Jack Torrance. It's all over that documentary. So Jack Torrance is sort of his alter ego. And then so Jack Kirby died in 1994, and this was exactly 23,700 plus 237 days after Kubrick was born, which is really perfect. You don't get much more perfect than that.
Yeah.
When it's one of these breakouts of breaking out of numbers, when it's just like that plus that, it's hard to deny. But I like that correlation between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Kubrick Kirby, and that borne out by the numbers again.
And all my knowledge of Jack Kirby comes from Christopher Knowles, whose initials obviously are CK.
Right, true. Yep. Let's see. There's the one I wrote one of my first little blog posts about, which is that 666 days before Kubrick died was the day that the computer Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov. It was the first time a computer beat a human in chess.
That's huge.
Which is huge. It's huge for many reasons. One of which is that Deep Blue itself was modeled after the monolith from 2001.
Really?
It's like a big towering black monolith, and it's built by IBM,
There you go.
Yeah, which is all over, which is Hal. So here we have Hal in the real world beating a human in chess, just like he does in the movie. And it's Deep Blue, which is DB, which is 42. And that was 666 days before Kubrick died. And probably the very first Crypto-K fact ever put out in the world was the one that 666 days after Kubrick died was January 1st, 2001. This was the first day of 2001, was 666 days after Kubrick died, which was out on the internet. That was out on the internet like in 2001 on all kinds of crazy people's websites, but that's a classic. But then I was the first person to go back. What do you take from that fact? What what happened before. So I went back before that, and my mind was blown by the correlation.
Yeah, that's
There's just a few more little pictures here. One of which is between 2001 and the Apollo 11 moon landing is a perfect 237 plus 237 days. So there's a midpoint in there which I won't talk about just now. And then okay, so this one's a little more convoluted. These get more and more convoluted as they go on. So this one relates to Pink Floyd, so
okay.
that's your interest. And so 2,037 weeks into Kubrick's life was August 10th of 1967. So during that week, the 2037th week of his life, was the day that Pink Floyd released their first album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
Hmm.
So that was released in the middle of Kubrick's 2037th week. And then 237 days later, so this is 2,037 weeks plus 237 days into Kubrick's life, 2001 released on April 2nd, 4/2. And then the best part is that we have a character called Floyd,
Yes.
Haywood Floyd, and the very first time you see him,
Oh, yes, I know this.
yeah, you know this, that the door opens and he's sitting next to one of the stewardesses who's wearing all pink,
Yeah.
and it's right there, and you can read it, pink, and
It's a
then Floyd.
rebus. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it happens in multiple shots. So that's pretty special, and of course, the power probably of the Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon syncing with 2001 is
Oh,
incredible.
it's incredible.
Yeah. So this last one is really it's really gonna be a mouthful for me, but it could probably relate a little bit to Enoch, because it has to do with with the number 969. I want to point out that most of this number stuff really just comes from the Bible. Like, it's not like these numbers were just pulled out of thin air. Like, these numbers are all over the Bible, especially in Revelations with 42. And but that's a whole other conversation. So one of the things is that Methuselah is the oldest man to ever live, and he lived 969 years, and he was the father of Enoch. I'm quite sure. I'm pretty sure, or Enoch was the father of him, one of the two. But anyway, 969 is 237 plus 732. So you get a 237 mirror sum is 969, and plus it's like the moon landing was in 1969, and so we keep going. um, I'm really going to be coming off it like Jim Carrey with the walls on this one, but okay, Kubrick dies, and we go back 969 weeks, and we land on August 10th, 1980, and this was the birthday of a mass murderer known as whose name was Joshua Komisarjevsky, Russian guy, I think, who he was the perpetrator of what has become known as the Cheshire, Connecticut home invasion murders. And this murder happened on July 23rd of 2007. So July 23rd obviously is 23/7. It's a serious day. It's there's no need to explain why that's significant, but it's '07 too, so it's 23/7/07 or 7/23/07. It's just a 23/7 date, right? And this murders, which was perpetrated by this guy who was born 237 plus 732 weeks before Kubrick dies, murders these people exactly 1,530 plus 1,530 days before Kubrick dies on July 23rd of '07. Can you picture that? Is that coming through? Are you there? Have I lost you? I lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry, I hit the mute button. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
Okay, good.
Shit.
Okay, so okay, so Kubrick died 1530 plus 1530 days before 7/23/07 when this guy did his murdering. Red rum, right? It's
Yeah.
red rum. And I just like also how it's Cheshire, Connecticut, and the abbreviation is CT, so it's like a Cheshire cat murder. That's what it looks like to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little Alice in Wonderland. So okay, so we have 1530 plus 1530. What's the middle? What's the midpoint there that separates, or is the so-called child of the two parents of these murders?
Okay, the parent thesis. Gotcha.
The parent thesis. What happened in the midpoint? Well, this was May 15th, 2003, which if you read that out, it's 5/15/03. So you got a 15/03 in the date. Now, this was the day The Matrix Reloaded came out.
Okay.
And that's the one where, Neo meets the architect, and he's this bearded white man in a white room with TVs. And
it's the same scene as in, I always think of the scene with the architect, it's the same scene in Clockwork Orange, where, what's the main character's name?
Alex?
Alex. He talks to the priest in the prison.
Right.
It's the same meetup.
Yeah, totally.
Because it's all about choice.
Indeed.
And I always wanted to sync up those films, or sync up the audio in some way. I'm sure that there's some,
you should.
Some radioactive action going on there.
Something else about The Matrix Reloaded I was thinking about that applied to this, but I can't really remember what it was. But anyway, that's all good enough. But then, also on this day, the same day as The Matrix Reloaded, was the death day of a guy who was named Stanley Kimball. And this is a guy who was a descendant of the original Latter-day Saints apostles. He was a very prominent Mormon historian, for whatever that's worth.
LDS, yeah.
Yes, but it's in the name, Stanley Kimball, and it's not just Stanley K, but it's Kimball because in 2001, the name Kimball comes up because one of the patients or the scientists in hypersleep who Hal, murders, got the name Kimball. It says Kimball Jr. on his thing. And then, so this is. The name Kimball has its own thing because it's in the movie. It's in the Fugitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
The TV show and the movie where he's the fugitive. And the Fugitive TV show premiered or ended, one of the two, exactly 237 weeks before 2001 released. Mm. So you got all these, and then I could do a whole show about the Fugitive. But that trope, and in that title, and in that story, is a lot, like with the one-armed man and everything. So anyway, but then you look at Stanley Kimball and his lifespan, and you do another one of these breakdowns, and you find that it comes out to perfectly 153 plus 1530 plus 2307 weeks lifespan of Stanley Kimball, who died on this day. And then I turned it into this little lightning flash of dates through the 60s, part of which I already went over with you, with Kubrick, 2037 weeks plus 2037 or plus 237 days as 2001 premiered. So that takes us back to the midpoint between 2001 and the Apollo moon landing, which, if you remember, the moon landing happened 237 plus 237 days after 2001 premiered. Well, what happened in the midpoint of that?
Okay.
237 days after 2001 premiered was the day Stanley Kimball turned 42.
It was the day?
The day. And then 237 days later, Apollo 11 moon landing, which Stanley Kubrick directed, or whatever. So, all that shit that I just laid out is what we sent to Jason Louv. I don't know why he'd be intimidated or put off or just not wanting to. And then I also include a link to one of Sean's, essays from his website, which take this whole thing and just,
Oh,
you know, put it into a density and length that is hard for anyone in this day to really
yeah.
to even have attention span to do. Which and I don't blame people.
That is one of a kind. That Sean Fellow website.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
you gotta. I mean, oh,
Well, it was with you, like you were saying with Jason Louv. It's like when I found, Mark was the first person to tell me about Cryptokubrology, and I read it, and I was just blown away by it. I was confused. I wanted to know more, um, and it got to the point where I was just like, I gotta talk to this guy, and I did, and turns out I'm pretty much the only person that it's just the right person, I guess, that really latched onto it, and he sent me the he sent me the he sent me the unpublished stuff that had not been published at the time. He was like, "You want to see some of this stuff? The stuff I'm holding back?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to know. Bring it
oh,
on."
that's good.
So then I read it, and we began emailing, and this, here we are today. So anyway, that's all the stuff I sent, and that's a lot of the stuff that's been on my Twitter, and it's a lot of what's in that drawing that Dennis Cook
Mm-hmm.
uh, made, which is awesome.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And but there's so much more. It goes on and on. A good one I found recently was that I was looking at Eyes Wide Shut, and I went 100. So what's 666 weeks after Eyes Wide Shut came out? Because really this chord of 333, 666, 999 week intervals that connect The Shining and Eyes Wide Shut and JFK and other things. But anyway, 666 weeks after Eyes Wide Shut was, get this, the 237th anniversary of the start of the American Revolution. So April 19th of 2012 was 237 years after the first shot of the American Revolution was fired. Which, that so all of these things, they point towards this like overarching meta narrative or just story that involves like the United States, the moon landings, Stanley Kubrick, 9/11, and it's all very bears. We haven't even talked about the bears. That's the real thing that people hate.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Um,
There's so much here.
a couple of things I want to comment.
Okay.
Have you ever read McKenna's Invisible Landscape?
Yes, I have.
So right there, that was like the way that you broke it down, the way that you explained, the pathways and everything. It just reminded me so much of reading McKenna talk about how he pieced together the time wave.
Yeah.
You're just picking and scratching, and that something just gives you the energy to keep moving forward, and then it becomes bigger and bigger. So yeah, it just seems to me to be another a contender. It's a contender right now. We don't know what is going to come of it, but it's something. It makes me think of the Crowley statement, "Nothingness with twinkles." That's the space that we deal with in this stuff, right? You're just in this infinite space, but it's seemingly dark. But then there's just these little twinkles that you sort of jump and hop and go
Yeah.
and go and go. And that's a phrase that was always so elusive to me when I first read it, because it was like the answer to everything for him at one point. And the more that you meditate upon it, you see these examples, and Crypto K definitely.
You're talking about the time wave, or
Just the time wave, Enochian magic, Crypto K,
Right.
the tensor. It's when the human mind enters into a certain place, um, and is mapping out a certain territory that has nothingness but twinkles. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And that's what this is a mapping exercise because it's like Sean like has said to me. People say, "What does it mean? You know, what does it all mean?" And his the comparison is like you just found a continent, an undiscovered continent.
mhm.
What does it mean? You know,
Yeah, yeah. No,
like,
it's
it's
let's
not
go
an answer.
exploring. It's how does
Exactly.
it feel? It's
Right. Exactly.
that's such a linear question. It just doesn't even begin to penetrate the
No.
the
Accommodate.
landscape.
It's the
It's the
complexity.
invisible landscape.
Yeah,
It's
it
you're
is.
mapping the invisible landscape. It's what you're doing.
Yeah,
Um,
but also it's like it's so intricately related to the calendar because without the calendar, none of this would work. And that's one thing that I was kind of interested in talking to Jason and Louv about because John Dee, he's kind of related to the creation of the calendar. He was friends with Tycho
hmm
Brahe
He studied
and
with him, I believe.
studied with him, and he was involved in the whole 11 missing days in September thing, and when Britain like jumped forward 11 days to line up with the new calendar, he sort of I think he was the guy who said we should go ahead and do this
hmm
at this time, which was 11 days in September, which is kind of a funny
11K is the 11th letter. Yeah.
yeah, September 11th. So yeah, so John Dee, it's all in this occult world of and this product of this calendar. Let me say that again. This calendar is a product of this Renaissance occult world that features all these characters like John Dee and how does Stanley Kubrick relate to John Dee? I mean, I've run some numbers, found some things. One of the things being that John Dee's, his queen was Elizabeth, and
hmm
Kubrick's queen is also Elizabeth II.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and of course, Kubrick lived in London most of his life. I mean, he was American, but you could just say, there's just that correspondence. There's some numbers I won't. I'd have to go looking for them, but there is this feeling like so John Dee was like the voice whispering in the ear of the Queen, and it just feels like Kubrick is the voice whispering in all of our fucking heads, and everyone's head. He's the guy whispering in John Dee's head through the fucking crystal ball, or whoever, and maybe not Kubrick, but it's like Philip K. Dick's formulation of Ubik. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Ubik sounds so much like Kubrick
Yeah.
because Ubik in that whole story is everywhere and everything, but nothing. He's behind the world, and he's sending messages through the ether essentially to these people who are dead but don't realize it.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, Jesus.
And so when you see a movie and it has a 237 in it, but it's from 1954, and it seems perfectly in line with all of these, it just feels like Kubrick was on set directing it, or 1947. Um, it's like Ubik speaking through the ether of the electric signal current, and through the actions of the people who engaged in the ritual of this cinematic exercise of getting a camera and this recreation of the eye and pointing it at people and things and then putting it together. So it's like there's somebody in all of our heads kind of at the controls.
Yeah, I.
That's how things fall into this seemingly so perfectly into this programmatic thing, and that idea is borne out by these tropes in movies, like which I could get into. The whole idea of somebody's in your head, like you could go a lot places with that idea. Um, anyway, what were you gonna say?
No, I'm right there with you. I feel, um, I kind of feel that like, the relationship I had with LeClaire was one of me as the little brother and him as the big brother.
Yeah, same here.
And there are times where I feel some relationship with you where I'm the big brother and you're the little brother. I feel like we bump heads and we kind of argue, but we always kind of come back to a common ground.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're twins. I'm not trying to make it like a maturity thing or a knowledge thing. It's just the way the totem pole was built, you know.
Hmm.
And I feel like everything that you've eloquently, and it was eloquent, what you've just sketched out, it just gives me so much joy because it brings me back to that discovery phase of like the synapses of God or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you just get to just ride that shit. I think that I don't know, man. I think my skepticism of the Crypto K was about 5 minutes. You know what I mean? I had that superficial hit of, oh, you gotta be kidding me, Alex. And then it was like, no, whoa, shit, and it just was more and more, and it had that shine to it. So I'm just really excited for you and really happy that you and Sean are taking this further. Because having a partner in crime is amazing until it's not.
Yeah. No, totally. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Well, it was kind of like, I mean, I talked to Mark all the time, and he really reoriented my perception, and in his writing, and in him.
Hmm.
Um, but it just didn't. I don't even need to go there. It just
Yeah.
fell apart, and I wasn't. I wanted to know more. It's like in Starship Troopers, the little military propaganda thing where, do you want to know more? Yeah, I fucking want to know more. So
Yeah,
I
no,
kept.
yeah, it's just like, yeah, if you don't use this fucking tool as the internet to reach out across the galaxy to the voices that are constantly in your head and that are just keeping you up at night, and you just keep seeing that flash, and I want to know more. Um, it's my God, if you're not like, there was one thing about like the one of the preeminent goals of magic in Dee's age was to be able to send a message to somebody uh, across the country in 24 hours or something like that.
Mm,
Like that would be the height of magic, and they had this ritual, right, where they would like Lou depicts it, but it was like this magical ritual, and the message would telepathically appear in the person's head 24 hours later, and not even instantaneously. Like they still gave,
lag.
yeah, like because it would be that powerful to get your message that far that quickly, and how much power you could wield to have information go that far that fast. And I mean, we are so far beyond light speed in comparison to the magical desires of that time. Um, and so, yeah, I'm like, Jason, if you're out there, I just think that a Nokian to us is palatable because of the buffering of time and the magic that we're dealing with. And when you come across something like Crypto K, I think you have to give it its fair due and a balanced look. And I really hope it wasn't something that turned you off or scared you away or derailed a commitment, because it just is really. My jaw dropped when I saw that we have to cancel and there was no rescheduled date. I'm just like.
Yeah.
And then that Seinfeld music just played in the background, I was just like.
Radioactive. Something. What's that?
Oh, one last thing I want to share. One nugget from the book. I'm going to share this nugget. You share a nugget, and I think this is pretty good, right?
Sure.
All right.
Let's do it.
So, One thing that was amazing to learn about John Dee is that the motherfucker was pretty much poor his entire career. He saved the the Empire of England, or he saved the country with his knowledge, and he got a leg of lamb. Like he literally got like a leg of lamb. Now he got his little house, and he probably lived in a nice, cool pasture because England was like a fucking slum before their rise to riches. I mean, it was really
Yeah.
a destitute land. So I imagine he didn't have riches, but he had security. But he really, in this book, he sketches out pretty much a penny pinching lifestyle. Um, but in his house where he lived, where he did these ceremonies with Kelly. Do you know how the table was set up that they would do the magic from?
No, I don't.
Let me try to sketch this out for you, and you tell me what you think, what you initially think of. All right. So the holy furniture in the structure of the room, right? I think that the numbers are four, representing the four elements, seven, the 7 days of creation, and 12, representing the 12 signs of the zodiac, right? So everything resonates through these numbers. I mean, Crypto K, you've got five numbers, right? It starts from there, right?
Hmm.
Anyways, he has this holy table, 3 cubic feet in size, which is to be made of sweet wood. On top of it is this 3 by 4 grid of Enochian characters, and it's consecrated in yellow paint. So it's this like really ornate and very detailed and specific shit, right? The characters around the edge of the table are shown to be zodiacal, pertaining to the manifest universe, right? Then they have a wax seal upon which is carved a heptarchic diagram and the names of several angels. The angels reveal the outer ring of the sigillum, creating the beasts, birds, and fowls. The ensigns of creation, 7 seals to be made of purified tin or painted upon the table itself, right? Then the table was to rest on a red silk carpet on 4 small wax copies contained within wooden boxes. Then a round yellow table combining the 49 names of the good angels was to rest on the floor beneath the table, right? So they're building and stacking specific, very complex things, right? Almost like a three-dimensional representation of the rosy cross, that's on the back of the Thoth Tarot.
Hmm.
How it's all interconnected and overlaid and layered. Then, after you build all these things, right, a white linen cloth was used to cover the entire table. Right? All that complexity, then, you cover with a white linen cloth, giving the appearance of a large white cube upon a red silk carpet. Right? So all
Hmm.
that work, and then you cover it with a fucking a white linen cloth. Then a silk cloth of flashing colors was to cover the top of the table. And then the scrying ball was to rest in a 3-legged holder in the center of the sigillum with the red and green silk layer between them. The final effect is of a large cube table covered with flashing silks, with the scrying ball being the only visible element of the entire array. What does that make you think of?
White table and the red.
But think about what the complexity of what's underneath.
You're gonna have to tell me.
Okay, as I sit here looking at my laptop computer, imagine an old school computer, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Inside the cube is all this complex machinery, right?
Yeah.
And all you look at is the scrying crystal.
Right.
But you've done all this work and compacted this stuff, so you have this white cube, but underneath is all this complexity that apparently never sees the light of day. It's like the guts of a fucking computer. And then you have just this scrying cube. That's the only thing that's visible to the fucker. And this is where they get all their language from the angels. What the fuck are we looking at right in front of us? We're literally looking at the fucking monolith in our hand with the fucking iPhone, and then we're looking at this fucking Enochian scrying furniture with our computer.
Yeah.
It just doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't, or it. No, it
It's
doesn't.
just baffling. It's just baffling, and
It
I
is.
desperately wanted to get Jason's thoughts on this level of the information that he presented to us. Um, and honestly, if you've made it this far, if you even give a shit, or if someone's talking shit, this is not meant to cast any dispersions or aspersions. I don't know what the fucking phrase is. I'm not trying to give shit to Jason. I'm just trying to figure out uh, why you and me are talking right now, and why someone is finally talking about Crypto K. And god damn it, I wish that we would have Jason in the middle of this, because I think his opinions and insights and knowledge would be valuable. That's it. That's it. So.
That's a fair. That's a fair sentiment.
Yeah. Got
I don't
any
know.
last nuggets?
I got nuggets coming out my fucking ears here, but well, the one thing is just about Ubik, and I don't want to get lost in the details because I can some. That's a stumbling block is that
Mm-hmm.
you get lost in this
Yeah.
as you're picking through the dirt. You get distracted by this shiny thing over here, and you kind of forget what you're doing. But this was too amazing because it relates to Ubik, which I already said sounds like Kubrick, and the book is just has that has the whole Crypto K thesis in it. Um, but then if you go to philipkdickfans.com, Philip K. Dick dickheads, super fans, have
Mm-hmm.
compiled all of his works in numerical order. I love when people do this. So you can from his short stories to his novels, everything that was published, sorted and numerically ordered. So you can go and you can look at what was his 42nd work or whatever. So you go and you look for Ubik, and you find that it was his 153rd published work and his 42nd novel.
Oh.
So it's pretty.
Yeah. Right.
Um, yeah. So, but in terms of just what you said, but not just to Jason, but to everyone out there who might be listening. If you've ever been interested in sync or conspiracy theory, or Terence McKenna, or Philip K. Dick's exegesis, or fucking anything and everything, give Crypto K a chance. And we're gonna have some stuff put out there, introductory material to start engaging with the audience, and it's gonna be on YouTube. And yeah, just give it a chance. I don't think I'm crazy. I think this is
Well, if anyone out there has heard Alex talk today and finds that he's crazy, I I would like to hear your arguments, because yeah, you're not crazy.
I mean, I don't think I'm crazy, but this is what crazy people do. Is
Well, I think what if you go
in a way.
no, well, I think this is the sublimation that Jung was talking about. You have to learn how to navigate these waters.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you either drown. I mean, it is a type of breathing underwater. I mean,
Probably. This is water.
yeah, it's just your boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Born 6,666 days before The Shining came out.
See, like on some level, you should be a character on The Office, that show, and just popping up with these motherfuckers. And in one regard, it's like that's the crazy one in the office, but by the end of the show, you're the only sane one in the.
Yeah, totally. I'm Creed.
It's so good. I really enjoyed this. This was great.
Yeah, it's always fun talking to you.
Yeah, dude. I recorded this.
So did I. 153 minutes, or an hour 52
Yeah,
minutes.
let's just end it fucking right now, and we'll deal with it later. Later.